Grandstand takes to the Thames once again. A damp, grey, overcast day, but it's not the weather that's important, but river conditions. And they're ideal for the 145th University Boat Race, which you can see live on Grandstand this afternoon. Welcome to Putney. A tremendous afternoon of sport ahead. Not only the University Boat Race, but also the second day of the Davis Cup as well. Perfect for those who like their sport, strong on emotion and strong on tradition as well. Putney to Mortlake has been the traditional boat race course for over 140 years, and in recent years the winner has become something of a tradition as well.
As they come up, the flag goes down.
Cambridge have gained the victory.
Success again for Cambridge. As Cambridge make it 5 in succession. And they have won the boat race for the 6th consecutive time, and that matches their best sequence since the war.
And this is the boat with which Cambridge hope to make it straight win number 7, but this year's race is expected to be the closest for a long, long time. The bookmakers going for Oxford as very narrow favourites. Today, Oxford could at last recapture victory in a race that's due off shortly before 3:30. So we'll be following the tension of the last month's build-up, in particular through the eyes of the Cambridge bow, Toby Wallace. For Toby and the rest, unrelenting sacrifice and dedication. Well, almost. It's all silence and reflection for the women's boat race crews. We'll see how they brought themselves to razor-sharp concentration for last weekend's race.
I was so nervous this morning I put orange juice in my frosty. I haven't really woken up yet.
But as for the boat race, the tides here on the Thames dictate that it's a slightly later than usual start, round about 4:30 for the crews, so a leisurely start to their day. This was the Oxford crew leaving their hotel this morning before a gentle warm-up on the river. And the weather that greets them today significantly cooler than the last few days, but only a gentle breeze. Bit of rain around as well. Well, Cambridge hadn't lost their appetites. A hearty breakfast before their warm-up as they look to extend this long, unbeaten run. And we'll be focusing on all aspects of the boat race build-up, plus the Isis Goldie Reserve race as well between now and 3:30. Thanks, Ray. It's a 3:30 start for the University Boat Race this afternoon, so between now and then we'll have all the big race build-up, plus 3 races from Haydock Park as well. It's a cool, overcast, rather drizzly afternoon here down by the river, but the river conditions are good, and both crews have been out on the river already this morning, experiencing those conditions. And Oxford had an interesting experience themselves when they came up against 2 poor canoeists who've been going all night in the Devizes to Westminster race till they met up with Oxford. The canoeists in the wrong, and in the river, their race was over. Oxford completed their warm-up. They're the narrow favourites, looking for their first win in 7 races. A lot is made of tension on boat race day. Maybe the tension showed in the Cambridge faces on their way to their warm-up this morning. The priority is to stay loose, supple and relaxed in whatever method works for you, and this works for Cambridge. And the diminutive figure of Jan Sharif in the background there today, becoming the 10th woman to cox a boat race crew. Well, this morning was also an opportunity for Gary Herbert on our behalf to talk to the 2 coaches, Sean Bowden of Oxford, and first of all, Robin Williams, the coach of Cambridge.
Robin, you just had the last outing now of a 6.5-month campaign. How was it?
Pretty good, pretty rhythmical. It's one we do just to try and dispel any nerves, and we just give the guys a bit of a chance to get out there in a little bit of privacy and let rip, which is what we did. So no, they're going fine.
And how's the mood generally in the whole camp?
Very, very upbeat. I mean, you know, to be honest, I'd be fibbing if I said that they're not nervous, because they're bound to be. Who wouldn't be? I mean, I am. I have some butterflies, but I just keep thinking to myself, well, the butterflies feel good. It would be. It makes it more interesting, and it's you know, the emotion is what it's all about for me.
Does it get any easier for you? You've been doing this now for quite a few years.
No, I think if anything, it gets harder actually. I mean, yesterday I walked around most of the day thinking, I suppose, you know, frankly, kind of worrying about this and worrying about that, because it's really my job is to make sure we've thought through everything and covered every angle. And And by last night, I just thought, well, actually, the job's done now, and you know, I have to take a step back. It's their day, and they're either going to do it or they're not going to do it.
So the next few hours, the race is later on this afternoon. What happens over the next few hours?
Well, we go back to our lodgings now, try and persuade them to have a little bit of food, although they're not going to feel like it, but with 4 or 5 hours to go, it's important that they have a little bit of carbohydrate and keep the fluids going. We'll have a final talk just to make sure that we're clear on the bare essentials of what's going to happen, and then be on the coach and back down here.
Sean, it's 6.5 months now since you first started training for this boat race. You've had the last outing. How was it this morning?
Yeah, we had a good row, pretty relaxed and rowing well. Quite happy with, for whatever you can do on your last row.
How are all the guys?
Oh, they're ready. I think they're good spirits, ready to race.
You've been down on the tideway for the last week. How has the last week been?
I think we've just been making progress. A little bit shaky to start with, and then just finding our feet and finding some simple things to make progress on. And yeah, I've been quite happy with the work we've done.
The races are later on today. What's the rest of the day, the plan for you and for the crew?
Well, for me, it's doing a bit of work with the boat, just sort of checking everything, cleaning a whole lot up, kind of filling in a bit of time. And for them, it's go back, have some food, bit of a kit, relax, come back down here a couple of hours before the race.
Have you already had your major sort of crew chat about the race, or is that to come?
No, we've spoken a bit this week, but we had a talk last night, and that's the end of the kind of talking, really. Yeah.
And so before you go out, it'll be a shorter sort of talk.
Yeah, more to do with just focusing on the right things. I mean, if they're not motivated now, there's nothing we can do on a day. It's mostly to do with keeping people really focused and just making sure that they just do the right things.
Excellent. Well, if you can, Sean, enjoy the rest of the day.
Yep, I'll do my best. Thanks, Gary.
So the coach's job is almost done. The crews take to the water around about 2:45, and this 145th University Boat Race will be underway at about 3:30 this afternoon. Now here at Putney, still over an hour and a half to go to the start of the 145th University Boat Race, but for the women's crews, the hard work is over. Their race took place last weekend. Hazel Irvine now looks back at how it was won and all the hard work that went ahead of the big race at Henley.
It's the summer home of the Royal Regatta, but for 1 week in the spring, Henley upon Thames becomes a university town. The temporary residence for both crews in the women's boat race. This is their story of the big race build-up. Oxford haven't won the boat race since 1991, but this year they're in high spirits, confident they can turn a light blue tide.
Sarah Cornick wishes to show the public her ferry.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good.
We're quite boring, that's all we do today. We don't even like doing that.
We've been beating Cambridge all year in training and in competition. We've got 4 Old Blues back, which is quite a lot, and we're really determined. We're going fast, been putting in some good times. We're raring to go.
Cambridge, attention, go!
Unlike Oxford, this year Cambridge have a whole crew of novices. None have blue boat experience, but this most focused of 8s have rowed the race in their minds countless times.
Accelerate 10. Next stroke. Go. 7. 7. 7. Annihilate.
We've done psychological issues, but I don't think necessarily it's a disadvantage not having a winning crew, because all of the Oxford Blues are losing, and we feel that we're stronger.
And can you keep Cambridge's run going?
I hope so. We're looking for the 8th.
The night before the race, and the Oxford crew really wish it was the next morning.
Very excited. 1991, it's been a long time.
Don't you worry, little trophy, you're coming back home to Mummy for the millennium.
At Cambridge HQ, it's quieter, and with Coach Ron Needs, there's time for one last mental rehearsal.
Attention, go!
Draw. Draw. Stop. Stop. Reach out. Reach out.
race day morning. And perhaps summing up the tension in both camps is one Joe Telford.
I was so nervous this morning I put orange juice in my frosty.
Conditions on race day are themselves a little stomach churning. It's choppy on the Royal Regatta course and there's a strong tailwind blowing all the way along its 2,000 metres length to Temple Island. And the breeze is felt by the large crowds who've again turned up in force to line the towpath. It's the 54th running of the women's boat race and it's umpired for the first time by Chris Drury. The dark blues on the left-hand Buckinghamshire station, Cambridge on the Berkshire. You can hear Rebecca Pollard, the Oxford Cox, urging on her 8. They're striking 42. But her opposite number, Jennifer Phillips, in the Cambridge boat is determined not to be bullied. She's immediately warned for her steering. But crucially at this stage, Cambridge have a slight advantage over Oxford, a third of a length. This was not in the Dark Blues race plan. Claire Green and her crew had always imagined they would manufacture the more aggressive first 500. Cambridge have settled into a powerful smooth rhythm, striking 35.5. Oxford, no, they're falling behind. Rebecca Pollard seems confident, but in reality Cambridge are comfortably 3/4 of a length up. Travelling past the main section of the crowd at the Remenham Club, it's Cambridge who are coping better in the choppy conditions. Their timing is spot on, and their cox Jennifer Phillips is revelling in their apparent superiority.
Taking them, big one something, 750 pusher. This is ours.
It's beginning to look like it could be Cambridge again. They move a length in front, but Oxford aren't finished. And from the 1,000 metres point, the Dark Blues work very hard. Cox Rebecca Pollard orders another big push.
On the 500s, they're really, really hurting now. Every hurt you feel, they feel more. Go together, hold the finishes in, 6, in, Charlie catches, right. Give us something.
It's working. Oxford are gaining. It's back to 3/4 of a length. But with the island in sight, Cambridge demoralised their opponents.
That's it, Cambridge, strong to finish. Let's make our mark. On 2, go! Sit up! Sit up!
After that extra surge, there's clear water now. It's 1 1/4 lengths the difference. The light blues as fluent and rhythmical as they've looked all the way down the course. From Oxford, meanwhile, a lurch right, and they're warned for their steering. It's desperation stuff now from Cox Rebecca Pollard.
Row your best. It's still on. It's still on. You've got nothing to lose now. Drive them. Drive them. Take it away now. Everything, go. Move it.
But it's too late for the Dark Blues, and Cambridge know it.
Onto the island. On 2, go. Sit up. Sit up. Reach out. Reach out. Like that. Squeeze back. Squeeze back. Squeeze back. Drive them. Drive them. Wind down. And last 20th on. Woo!
After half a year's training, the Cambridge novices have come of age in a record time of 6 minutes and 1 second.
Oh, you did it. You did it the whole way down.
Oxford were beaten by just 1 length, but it could be a mile as far as their dejected crew is concerned. Their emotions in complete contrast to those in the Cambridge boat.
Best feeling anybody could ever ask for. After 6 months of unbelievable grueling training. The dedication in this boat will blow your mind.
The rewards for successfully coxing the boat race are dubious, but predictable. In any case, Jennifer Phillips didn't seem to mind. So, 8 in a row for Cambridge. As they celebrate, for Oxford there's the hope of a new start in the new millennium. But for both crews, winners and losers, there's a sobering thought. Lectures, 9 o'clock, Monday morning.
Cambridge celebrations and Oxford disappointment. It's become a rather familiar scene around the men's race. Can Oxford turn history round for the first time in 7 years? Johnny Searle was part of, was it the last winning Oxford crew here?
No, I'm unfortunately a bit older than that, but 88 to 90.
Yeah.
We were still winning then.
But in the much better days for Oxford.
Yeah, it's interesting being part of what's now becoming a bit of a losing camp, and you begin to realise how hard it was for Cambridge to turn it around 6 years ago.
After a while, history like this and this long Cambridge winning run becomes a burden, doesn't it?
It does. It's a very hard thing to explain, but when in the last few years we've thought we had a good chance of winning, and then Cambridge has won, and you begin to have this announcement arrival.
They'll be a bit noisy behind us. This is the Oxford crew arriving, but
yeah, I don't suppose they're feeling that.
Go on, you can be heard above it.
Yeah, no, after you've had a losing run, and you begin to think, well, are we ever going to turn this round?
The mood inside that Oxford coach then will be what? They've had a good week, haven't they, in the last few days building up to this race?
Yeah, people certainly seem to think Oxford are favourites this year. Cambridge, I'd say unfortunately because I'm from Oxford, appear to be getting better every day. That's certainly the towpath talk, and I think at the beginning of the week a lot of people thought Oxford would win. I'm not so certain it's going to be a foregone conclusion. I think it could be a very close race today.
How crucial to the mood of both crews is what happens in the last 48 hours before the race? Is it as finely tuned as that?
In theory, it shouldn't be, because both crews should have been going well for weeks, and it's just about keeping that speed up at this late stage. You never know, if you haven't been going well, and then you suddenly get a lot better, then that can obviously be a massive boost.
And much is always made in the weeks coming up to the race of the physical comparisons between the two. Oxford, the bigger of the two crews.
I think the weight is it £0.5 pound or something like that?
Yeah.
I suspect that's probably not significant if we all think how much £0.5 pound is. Yeah, these crews are pretty evenly matched. There are years when it's the usual thing with sport. Good big ones beat good small ones. But
well, these are the good tall ones. Cambridge, the taller crew, arrived just a short time ago. A well-balanced crew, maybe not quite the same amount of experience.
Yeah, and that's Oxford's big strength is they've got these more internationals, more people who've done the race before. Again, as I said, Cambridge have got the advantage. They're in a winning system. They've got some excellent coaching. I'm a bit biased. Harry Mahon, who does a lot of their finishing work, is a fantastic coach, and he may have been the critical factor, I think, in these last few weeks.
We saw Jan Sharif, the young Cox, leading the Cambridge crew in there, and much has been made of her particular lack of experience and the kind of pressures and demands that's going to be on her today.
Yeah, I mean, turning it around, I think that the Oxford Cox obviously steered ISIS last year, and they had a big tussle with Goldie. He certainly proved himself at this kind of level. They've also had two close races in preparation. One with Molesey and one with Queen's Tower. Both those races involved a lot of clashes, so I think Oxford are well prepared for a ding-dong.
All to come. You're going to be part of our commentary team this afternoon. We've introduced you then to the runners and riders here. Oxford and Cambridge have both arrived, and the anticipation is increasing here at Putney ahead of the 145th University Boat Race. The towpath is filling up. We've seen both crews arrive, and a short time ago I was joined by both presidents for the toss. Who chooses Surrey? Who chooses Middlesex? Well, this is what happened a few minutes ago. And this is the new Aberdeen Asset Management Trophy, which will be presented to the winners of this 145th University Boat Race. This new trophy, one new aspect of this year's race. All the rest is history and tradition, including the toss, which is just about to take place. I've been joined by Charlie Humphreys, the Oxford president, and also by Bragg Crombie, the president of Cambridge. Duncan Clegg has the famous old coin, which will decide the starting stations.
Brad, there's the coin for you to toss. Thank you.
Heads. Charlie chooses heads, and it falls as tails.
We'll take Surrey.
Brad, you have the choice. You take Surrey.
Yes, thank you.
For any particular reason, what's your reading of river conditions today?
Well, we think both sides are equally favourable, so just have to take one.
Okay, the toss, the losing president always says, is not very important, but judge the mood and the kind of race that we're in for today.
The mood in our camp has certainly been very good over the last couple of weeks. I think Cambridge are going to be strong opposition. We should be in for a pretty close and exciting race today, but I don't think the toss will decide it. The conditions seem excellent.
The mood with both of you is good. Have a good race. We're looking forward to it. It's underway around about 3:30. Good luck.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Well, that was a short time ago. Johnny Searle, Cambridge win the toss, choose Surrey, which is this side of the river. What is the significance?
Well, in theory, it doesn't matter which side you are because the bends go left, right, left, other way around, right, left, right. So if you stay side by side for the whole distance, it makes no difference. The problem is that the last big Oxford bend is, they don't normally get to that side by side. So what will happen is Oxford will get the benefit of the first bend, and then Cambridge get the long Surrey bend in their favour, which is usually a pretty significant event.
We always say, the toss isn't that important to the losing president. In fact, it is.
It is important. It does make a difference. Just psychologically, if you are on Middlesex, as you go towards the Surrey bend, you know that you're going to have to row hard or extra hard for the next 5 or 6 minutes. In theory, as you come down the Chiswick-Ayot, if you're on Middlesex, the psychological thing comes back in your favour because both crews then know if you can just hang on to the final bend, Oxford will win. But it's whether they'll be that alongside for that long.
Well, now the crews know just a little bit more about the task ahead. How tense are these last few minutes for them?
I think different people vary. For me, I was always absolutely terrified. There'd be people calming me down. I went in tears. Just totally. I just couldn't wait to get out and get rowing because that's what they know about. But there are people who manage to stay calm. Not many of them.
Yeah. Tough time.
Well, they'll be looking forward to getting into the boathouse, picking up the boat, and just getting down to what they know.
That is the important thing. They'll be taken to the water in about half an hour's time, and this 145th University boat race underway at 3:30. And we'll have more aspects of the build-up between now and 3:30. And now the big race from Putney is about 50 minutes away. That's the scene. Looking down on our little craft because Gary Herbert and myself have taken to the water now in anticipation of the crews, Oxford and Cambridge themselves coming onto the water in the next couple of minutes. And one thing that it does afford us, Gary, is the chance to say that conditions out here seem absolutely ideal.
Yeah, apart from this lack of sun, we're pretty much
near perfect conditions. The tide is halfway up here, a little bit overcast, but the stream is running smoothly, the water is flat. It's as near perfect conditions, bearing in mind we're on the tideway.
Spectators might mind a lack of sun, the crews don't, do they?
By this time, you're really just focusing on the race, and the weather, the conditions of the sun, don't really come into it.
Now, the crews take to the water some 50 minutes before the race starts. Why? What do they need to be doing on the water? They warmed up this morning?
They've had a warm-up outing this morning. That's just more of a loosener, really, but they've got to go through their race plan. They've got to go through some short, sharp bursts, and then pretty much steady out.
And Oxford will be first on the water, and in your mind, certainly in many of the pundits' minds, slightly the favourites in this very closely matched race.
Without doubt, the talk on the tideway for the last 2 weeks, really, along the towpath here, is that it could be Oxford's year.
And as we saw earlier, Cambridge won the toss. Brad Crombie, their president, choosing the Surrey station. Significance in that, Gary?
Well, it says two things to me. First of all,
that they are confident of the first 3 minutes that they'll be able to hold Oxford around the bend. Secondly, they can see this race is going to go
side by side for quite some way.
So Oxford emerge from the boathouse to applause here on the towpath. And the first chance this afternoon for us to hear from our commentator, Barry Davis.
Well, it's the challengers who bring their boat to the water, hoping to end this sequence of 6 successes. Plenty of well-wishers down there with them as they come from the Westminster School Boathouse. The cock's making quite sure that he's happy before each man goes back to collect his blade. Andrew Lindsay, who's done it twice before there. And behind him, Morgan Crooks, the Canadian. There's Dan Snow. Snow, a freshman. the idea this year is that they may come out a little more quickly. And leading the way, as he should be, is the president, Charlie Humphreys, in the blue boat for the last 2 years, and in ISIS in 1996. One of those disappointed last year, 3 surviving blues, but believes that he's now leading a powerful and dynamic crew. He's actually the lightest man on the water, this biochemist from Hampton School and Oriel. And in front of him is another surviving blue, Henrik Nielsen, from Lund in Sweden, Cathedral School there, University of Lund and Hartford. 30 years old, he's the old man of the party. Says there's been more competition for places this year, and that's been very good for the crew as a whole. And they're putting his oar in the gate is Daniel Snow, who has much of his father's enthusiasm for life. His father, Peter Snow, he's doing a BA in history at Balliol, having been at St Paul's, and as I said earlier, is a freshman. In front of him is a man who very nearly gave up rowing. Then he thought the idea was pretty scary. What would he do with 6 hours a day? The answer is he could do quite a lot, because he's a Rhodes Scholar. Very bright fellow indeed. Tobias Ayer, an American from Vermont, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and at Worcester College. Another American, although he says he's 200% Irish. Family comes from Waterford. He comes from Buffalo, and via Princeton to Keble College at Oxford, Martin Crotty. Another with World Championship experience, as has Nielsen. And the man in front of him, who is Morgan Brooks, who is a Canadian, went to what he describes as a very British school on Vancouver Island, doing a diploma in social studies. In front of him, Andrew Lindsay, the smallest in the boat, but there is no one on the water with a bigger heart. Completes his time at Oxford in the summer with his BA in geography. He'd like it to be a first. He's working hard to that end. Kevin McWilliams, the boatman there, and also one of the coaches of the ISIS boat. And the man in the stroke seat was a world champion at 19, an Olympic silver medalist at 20, behind Pinsent and Redgrave. Colin Ettingshausen from Dusseldorf. 3 blues, 2 up from ISIS. 3 British, 3 Americans, 1 Canadian, 1 German and 1 Swede. And here's the last of the Americans, the Cox, Neil O'Donnell from St Joseph's College Institute in Buffalo. And at Keble College, he's going to have to give a little bit of weight to his opposite number. He's studying for an MSc in anthropology, which could be described as studying man as an animal. Well, he's certainly hoping that his crew will be all together to produce the goods and will race away. 5 internationals in the boat. They're 2.5 inches per man shorter than Cambridge, but ½ a pound per man heavier. As they wait to push off, we go into the Cambridge Boathouse, which is at King's College School, Wimbledon, down here on the Hard at Putney. Tabby Wallace, their bowman, will be the first as they lift their boat to the water. Tom Stallard on his right, and the little cox, Vian Sharif, who will instruct them when to lift, when to turn, when to put the boat down into the water. Little smile from the young lady from Lady Eleanor Hollis School, where she was head girl. She told me that the only real requirement then was that you took the leading role in the pantomime. Robin Williams, the coach, just going through shot there. Didn't see his opposite number, Sean Bowden. There's Robin Williams in the green wellies. Hunters. be his 40th birthday on Monday, but he hopes that in rowing terms life is going to begin for his crew slightly in advance of that. Nice to see a good crowd down on the hard, greeting the crews as they make their way out. Brad Crombie, pensive president there, Canadian in his third race. Not as sunny as one would have wished, but it's quite warm. The bowman will lead the way eventually. Harry Mann, who has played such a big part during the years of success for Cambridge. And then Mann, he's got rather used to that, as we'll find out a little later, because he will feature in a profile of what it's like to be a student in the boat race. He's the tallest and heaviest bowman in the history of the race. He's picked up a new nickname this year. They call him Cluedo. It has something to do with leaving a couple of candlesticks and trying to burn down the kitchen, so he became in the kitchen with the candlestick. In front of him is Mr. Cool, Tom Stallard, another freshman from Oundle School and Jesus College, said to me that you need someone to swing on the curtain sometimes. Certainly alleviates any feelings of pressure. And at 3 is the president. Says it's the end of a chapter in many ways. He and Humphreys and Lindsay from the Oxford boat, all survivors from 1997. And he's in the same seat as the president in 93 when this Cambridge run started. Joshua West, the first of 2 Americans with British connections, and he's the tallest man ever in the boat race at 6 feet 9 inches. His father came originally from the east end of London and was a nuclear physicist. Josh West refers to his height as being simply a piece of statistical intrigue. And here is Di Ellis. His father was born in Shrewsbury, spent his early life in Wales, and had a grandfather who captained HMS Suffolk, which was one of the ships which spotted the Bismarck. Very positive man from Cambridge, Massachusetts, doing part 2 in history and philosophy of science. And here is Kieran West, the first rower from Christ College for 35 years, since won Mike Muir-Smith. Cambridge won that year in 1964 by 6.5 lengths, and Kieran West wants to rid from his mind being in the losing crew last year rowing for Goldie against ISIS. In front of him is Graham Smith, known this year as Raimondo, which has something to do with his culinary skills, which are apparently not to everybody's liking, but a very experienced man in the boat. Was in the Olympic 8 in Atlanta in 96. This is Tim Buger. Both the strokes are from Germany, though Tim decided that he would go to studies in America rather than concentrate on his rowing career, but he's even so been in the under-23 World Championships on 3 years. Alan Innes, the coxing coach. One hopes he said all the right things to Bian Sharif for her good. She's the 10th female cox, incidentally, in the boat race. She's doing English with history of art. Former head girl of Eleanor Hollis School, like Abby Chapman, who was cox for Oxford a few years ago. Said she only became conscious that she was the only lady in the crew when they all went off for a haircut this week to the barbers, and they just gave her a dry trim. Not quite what she's used to, I imagine. So the Cambridge crew, 3 Blues, 5 homebred, 2 Americans, both with British connections, 1 Canadian, 1 German, 3 full internationals. So Cambridge on the water, ready to paddle downstream under Putney Bridge.
So they're about to get on their way with the unmistakable figure of Toby Wallace there in the Cambridge bow, the heaviest bow in the history of the race. And it was with Toby's help these past few days, and with Gary Herbert's help as well, that we tried to explain a little bit more about the special kind of dedication that's required to take part in the university boat race.
On behalf of the Oxford University Boat Club, I would like to challenge the Cambridge University Boat Club to race from Putney to Mortlake on Saturday the 3rd of April 1999 for the Aberdeen Asset Management Trophy. Do you accept my challenge?
On behalf of Cambridge University Boat Club, I accept your challenge. May the better crew win.
It is perhaps fitting that the 145th boat race, the last of the century, sees 2 evenly matched crews come head-to-head. Oxford aim to end the millennium on a high. Cambridge, and one man in particular, have other ideas.
I'm delighted and very proud to introduce to you today to Toby Wallace. Toby actually learned to row at Cambridge just a few years ago. He rowed in the Goldie boat in 1997, rowed in our Blue boat last year, and is a fine addition to our team. He hails from Jesus College.
My first introduction to rowing was in the bar when I first walked into Jesus, and some little person grabbed me and said, "You're tall, come and row." So the next day I was down at 6:30 in the morning in a little piece of wood sitting by the river, and I rowed in my first year for college. And as I did that, I have to ride past Goldie Boathouse to get to Jesus every morning. And Goldie Boathouse has 2 big glass windows, and you see all the squad guys training in there. And I rowed down one day with a girl who was coxing me that year, and she was so busy looking through the window she nearly rode into the tree in the river instead of where she was going. So I thought, I want to be in there.
It's a typical mixture actually of a boat race crew, where you've got one guy, Toby, who learned to row at Cambridge just a few years ago, and then there are 1 or 2 in the boat who have been to the Olympics, although they're not actual medalists. I think the standard in the boat between the 8 rowers this year is more on a level compared to last year and some previous years. So in a sense, I think that's a potential strength actually, that there are fewer differences. They're more on a level with each other.
I love the sport of rowing now, but to row in the boat race is a great honour to race for your university, and it's also kind of like your 15 minutes of fame. You sit on the start over there by Putney Bridge, and there are thousands of people on the bridge all along the banks and just screaming, and it's just like they've all come to watch you, and you feel like a pop star for the day.
Cambridge, a seat of academia, a wealth of history, where lovers idly punt away long summer evenings. Oh, and let's not forget the students. And where do all students go after a quiet drink? To the Curry House. And we're better to burn off all that carbohydrate than with a good old-fashioned sing-song.
Wake up and get out of bed. No, dude, wake up and get out of bed.
But if you're a member of the Blue Boat, it's still an early start. The crew assembles at the boathouse at 6:30 every morning for a grueling 2-hour session on the ergos. The aim is to improve technique and endurance. training completed, it's then a mad rush to lectures. There are no exceptions for any member of the crew. Lectures are compulsory and deadlines for work must be met, even if it means extra hours in the library.
Shouldn't be afraid.
Lunch finished, it's a 40-minute drive to Ely, where Cambridge train. Each outing is designed to bring the crew closer together. It's a combination of high-rate, intensive pieces and long, steady endurance work. As the boat is returned to its rack, it completes another day for a crew preparing for one of the biggest races of their lives.
Welcome to the National Water Sports Centre, where Cambridge spend their penultimate week before the boat race. It's Tuesday evening at 9:45 on the first night of our camp here, 12 days before the race. Let's go and see what everyone's up to.
Righto! Yo, Cambridge is great. Yo, smashing. Righto.
Bradshaw, Graham, and Timothy, relaxing, watching TV.
It's 7:30 on Tuesday the 23rd. A new day's training, 11 days to go. Bart's just woken me up every morning after we've woken up. We write down our resting pulse, how many hours sleep we had, and what our weight is, to check whether we're well and how things are going.
It's now a process of fine-tuning. The twice-daily outings are designed to sharpen their reflexes and iron out any remaining faults. From here on in, all the crew's work is on the water. And coach Robin Williams now has the task of concentrating the crew's mind on the race.
We've just had lunch, and pretty much everyone else has gone to sleep. But since I have my exams in about 5 weeks' time, unfortunately I have to do some work. It's 4 o'clock, and we're going down for our second outing of the day.
The early evening session focuses on specific technical points. The work is more low-key, and the crew are more relaxed.
Well, we finished our second row for the day, and all that's left to do is go bowling.
The weigh-in is a psychological battle designed to intimidate the opponent. It's the first time both crews have met since the challenge was issued. Next time, they'll be on the state boats.
Toby Wallace is the bowman. Blue boat 98, Goldie 97.
15 stone 2. Although Oxford have weighed in 21 pounds heavier this year, Cambridge will have the tallest and heaviest bowman ever. Well, according to Toby Wallace, anyway.
You're in London now, and there's a feeling of sort of a tension increase, or the excitement.
The feeling of excitement definitely increases. We come here and there's just thousands of photographers around, and you see Josh get on the scales and the camera's going mental. But yeah, really here you really feel like you're in the spotlight and the world's watching you.
Every day, you know, there's going to be butterflies now, and it's a matter of just trying to keep them on the boil so that they don't come to a peak too soon, and they don't come to a peak too late. It's got to be Saturday, and it's got to be 3:30, and they've got to be ready to do the job then.
This week I'll be really focusing on polishing my technique, fixing the faults the coaches have been talking to me all year about, and really trying to tie into the guys in front of me. And in terms of my mental state, I'm trying to stay really relaxed. The adrenaline rush you get when the gun goes off or the starter says go is enough you need to bring the best out of your performance.
In terms of his temperament, he's an ideal rower, and certainly physically he's got what it takes, and he's also got the experience of a boat race and a Goldie Isis race as well. So it feels good to have him sitting there in the bows, and you know, he'll be looking to cross the line first on Saturday, I'm sure.
So the waiting is almost over for those crews. 3:30 start for this 145th University boat race. But on the Thames yesterday, competition almost as intense as that we'll see today. The World Sculling Challenge brought together the best in the sport, competing for a title won by Greg Searle a year ago. Now, a virus prevented Greg from coming back to defend his title, but Gary Herbert now reports on how yesterday's event was won.
It's going to be a very good race today. We've got world champions, we've got Olympic champions. The water looks like it's going to be quite challenging, and the weather looks like it's good, so we should be in for a very good race.
And do you have any secrets on form on who are the favourites today?
Yeah, well, on the men's side, there's the Slovenian, I think, Istok Chop. He's got an all-round good race. There's the two guys from North America, Derek Porter and Jamie Coburn, who are both very strong. Then on the women's side, there's Gwyn and Miriam Batten, which is interesting battle between sisters. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
In lane 1 is Miriam Batten. In lane 2, the Olympic champion Krodovic. In lane 3, Van der Schoik from the Netherlands. In lane 4, Sarah Gardner, the American lightweight single sculler. And lane 5 is Gwyn Batten, the two British girls on the outside.
Yeah, Miriam's on the near side here. She's going to be out of the picture and out of the stream slightly, so she's going to want to get a good start to get in with the rest of the race.
Steve Redgrave gets the race underway
and will cruise off clean.
Yeah, Miriam's got a good start down here at the bottom of the picture. She's going to want to force the way across and get into the stream, get in front of those other scullers.
Fantastic start there by Miriam. She is a length and a little bit more clear water ahead of the rest of the field, and a very classy field here today, Greg.
Yeah, it's a fantastic race today. There we see Miriam. She's sculling along really strongly. She's really trying to move up and get in front, and she's doing pretty well there.
The crews now move into a rhythm, and they seem to be long and flowing.
Yeah, it's a strong stroke she's got there. She's leaving her arms straight. She's leaving the blades out. She's looking strong. I see Gwyn here is catching up with her. She's the girl who's gone with her. And I think as we look back, the others are beginning to struggle a bit with this bumpy water, and they're now in the wash of the two British girls.
As predicted, the two British girls now opening up a fair gap of clear water as the crews move on towards Hammersmith Bridge. How far, Greg, is the fact that this is a
very tricky river to navigate? Got anything to do with these distances?
Yeah, well, the British women here have got a good lead set up because they're able to steer the river better. They know where the line is. They know where the fast water is. They spent a lot of time growing up here. They've done most of their work here. Two of our most successful women rowers.
So it's a family battle on here for first and second place.
Yeah, Miriam probably the better athlete. Gwyn maybe the tidier, more experienced sculler.
And Miriam
now sculls convincingly home.
The world champion from the double sculls last year. Emphatic victory over her younger sister. Coming up to the line. It'll be about a length of
clear water.
About 3 seconds between her and her sister.
Yeah, they're both looking relaxed there, but I can tell you that's hurt them. That's been a pretty tough race. Gwyn's made a race all the way to the line.
Confirmation there. A win for Miriam. Second is Gwyn, and the Dutch girl, Van der Schoik, in third position.
I was really annoyed that I got lane 1, which is right over the other side, but I made the best of it. I knew I had to get out hard and fast and dominate the race from the start and then hang on. Unfortunately, my sister caught me up, and I had to keep going because I can't let my little sister overtake me.
The men's race. In lane 1, Calabrese. Lane 2, the American Jamie Coburn. Istok Chop in lane 3, Derek Porter in 4, Stefano Bassellini in lane 5, and Greg Searle does not go today, as Redgrave again gets them off first time.
Yeah, and I expect the speed here will be in the middle of the course. We've got Istok Chop in the yellow. We've got the two North Americans either side of him. Derek, the Canadian, on the far side. Making a race of it there, getting out. He's handling the conditions better than I thought he would for a strong man.
Choppy water here for the men's race, but it's a tight line across the first 3 from Coburn, Chop and Porter.
Yeah, these three are where the pace is. They're handling the conditions pretty well there. Both trying to really get some work on the end of their blades in those unpleasant conditions. Hopefully it'll flatten out as the race progresses.
Istok Chop's strong rhythm has seen him through the middle part of the course here. He's seen off Derek Porter, the Olympic gold medalist from 1992.
Yeah, he's looking like he's sculling well, but the conditions are getting quite nasty now. You can see a line there in the water where they row into an area where it really gets wavy. And Jamie Coburn there has come through into second place, and he's really just doing his best to try and survive and get some power on the end of those oars.
The will be a test for all the scullers now, a test of nerve, a test of skill, and of how they're coping with the water. And Chop has stopped, and he seems to be stopped, and he's fiddling around with his
shoe there, Gary. He's putting his foot back into the shoe. He's pulling at something that's got stuck under his leg there. His boat will be full of water, I should think. These boats much smaller than the Oxford and Cambridge ones.
And who is that? That someone has fallen in there. We'll wait till we get a closer picture. And it seems
That's
the
Derek
Canadian.
Porter, the Canadian blades you can see there, but it looks like he's all right there.
smooth water now for Jamie Coven. He can start to close the gap down
And on the race leader here, the Slovenian
Istok Chop, as both scullers now race for the line. It's going to be a close finish here. And all the way, Coven looks to the finish. Istok Chop looks to the finish. And it looks like Chop on the line by about half a length. We'll wait for confirmation. He doesn't know what the final result is. And there it is. Istok Chop wins half a length after 4.5 miles.
from Jamie Coven, and the Italian Galabresi finishes in third.
And Steve Redgrave hands the trophy to Istok Chop, the 1999 winner of the Thames World Sculling Challenge.
And that was yesterday on the Thames when Gary Herbert conditions somewhat different to the comparative calm we've got today.
Oh, without doubt. We had the sun out
Yesterday, but as you can see from the pictures there, it was choppy, and young Derek Porter unfortunately went in, got a bit of a shock of his life.
Good event which got some attention, and it begs the question. We're here with crowds lining the towpath as ever for the University Boat Race. This could be expanded into something bigger and better for rowing, couldn't it?
Well, without a doubt, rowing currently is one of the strongest sports in this country.
We've shown that at the Olympic level, and now obviously the boat race, the standard of boat race crews is very high. With this sculling race
The day before, it is a festival, but we do need to develop it more. It's great that we're getting it onto television.
and just attract some more foreign competitors.
Now, your impression of the dedication that it takes to compete in the boat race, that was rather underlined by the experience you had with the Cambridge crew, the time you spent with them.
Again,
Early starts, I know.
I mean, it was frightening. We were used to, in the squad, sort of rowing at about 8 o'clock and then another session after breakfast and very leisurely days. These guys...
They've got to do everything so early and then go off to lectures. And then once they've had their lectures, they've got to come back and train. I mean, it's a long day, and
everything is condensed into 6.5 months. And when we
basically in the national team are on a 4-year cycle
between Olympic Games, from one Games to the next, these guys work
for 6.5 months for one 18-minute race.
And it is pressure, it is expectation, but a different kind of pressure than you would find in professional sport.
It is, because, I mean, this is, again, we're still one of the last amateur events here, the boat race today. I mean, if we weren't
here today, if all the crowds weren't here today, they'd still be here. The crews would still be here. I mean, they carry the weight of their own universities.
I mean, it's a big honour to row in the boat race
for your university.
Making the boat race crew, great ambition for all. Making the reserve crew is quite an achievement as well. Isis Goldie, the reserve race, underway a short time ago. Barry Davis can bring us up to date with what's been happening.
Isis were on the Surrey side, so that makes Goldie nearer us as the two crews got away. An interesting start and an interesting development down Fulham Reach. Johnny Searle.
That's right. Goldie got off to not quite such a good start as Isis. Isis got up maybe half a length early on to Isis as they came down past the boats.
Chris Bellew.
I think this was a quite big surprise as they clashed right off the start. There have been good warnings given to both crews about the importance of keeping apart, yet we had a clash within the first half minute. But Goldie seemed to come out of it rather more positively, and as they approached the Black Boy, they began to start to pull away.
It seemed like Oxford or Isis never really settled down into a kind of cruise pace. Usually the crews settle down after about 20 strokes at a pace they think they can sustain for the next few minutes, and the Isis crew seemed to just stay rating very high.
Isis, the winners last year after 8 successive successes by Goldie.
I think that was a big surprise last year. I think there was thought afterwards that there was quite an element of complacency perhaps in the Goldie crew, but this by comparison is a very inexperienced Goldie crew against a very experienced Isis crew, which contains 2 blues from last year and 4 Isis colours. So this young Goldie crew have really taken this net race by the scruff of the neck in the early stages.
Only one survivor in the Goldie boat from last year, and he's stroking. Richard Stokes. But Cambridge with the advantage now of the Middlesex bend, and they were taking good advantage of it, Johnny.
That's right. I mean, this first bend is worth about a third of a length to them, and as they came towards the bend, they were probably 3/4 of a length up already. So, if they could continue and take that extra half a length or so round the first bend, They were obviously would be hoping to get over and take ISIS's water.
Going there past Beverley Brook. The Fulham Football Club is now roughly where you're sitting in your living room at home, coming up on the near side as we look, with the Goldie crew on the Middlesex bend.
And certainly Goldie got the dream start that you need on Middlesex. As Johnny was saying, it's worth about a third, perhaps a little bit more, half a length perhaps, depending on how it's steered. But the critical thing for the boat race is to try and get the clear water, because that allows you to steal the opposition's water, to take the inside of each bend. And at this point, that's exactly where Goldie had positioned themselves. They were approaching a length ahead.
Thanks for that. As Chris said, the reason the Coxes fight is the stream is fastest right in the middle of the river. Both Coxes want to push the other Cox out of the fast water. They also want to push the other crew wide around the bends.
Well, let's look at the map of the course, with Goldie in a very good position, but of course the advantage will later, as they come up to Hammersmith, switched in favour of the crew on the Surrey station, which was ISIS, and they're now round that bend into Corney Reach. Cambridge still with the advantage. It looks a very good race again between these two crews.
It does. It looks like Oxford ISIS have managed to hang on around their bend. What you'd expect to see with Cambridge's early advantage is that Cambridge would have moved over right in front of ISIS. They don't seem to have been able to do that.
I think ISIS obviously would have fought very hard round Hammersmith, because that's where they get their most significant advantage. The bend underneath Hammersmith Bridge is worth half to two-thirds of a length, and Goldie have got to hang on round the outside, and they're rowing stroke for stroke, or have been rowing stroke for stroke, as they come towards the end of this Surrey bend. Now, what Goldie are looking for is the next bend, which will turn to their advantage.
Let me just make it clear that as you look at the two crews now, it's the Goldie crew on the left of the picture and the ISIS crew on the right. Good battle down Corney Reach. 35th contest between ISIS and Goldie.
And now you see, it looks like Goldie have got a significant, just over a length's advantage, and they're trying to cut across right in front of ISIS. If they push the puddles underneath the ISIS boat, that makes it very difficult to row. The boat bounces around. If the boat's less stable, it's harder to get the oars into the water.
Gideon Glassman is the Cox from St Paul's and Trinity Hall. St Paul's, they went past his school, so he has good knowledge of this river.
And it looks to be that Goldie are beginning to open up that gap now. It's increased to perhaps two-thirds of the length of clear water. They're now in a very strong position as they come on to their bend, which is going to give them a half to three-quarter length lead as they come towards Barnes Bridge. But ISIS are still in there, but it's a long way around the outside of a bend, when they'll have fought very hard in the middle part of the course.
3 freshmen and 3 in their second year in the Goldie boat. And Brad Crombie, the Cambridge president, was saying that they found a deal of talent which they hadn't realised at the start of the rowing year was there, and that seems to be being borne out by the performance here of Goldie.
Well, there are certainly 2 boys in this crew, Charlie Vickers and Richard Dawn, who've basically learned to row at Cambridge, and Cambridge have used this year to rebuild. They've actually got 8 people here who should all be eligible and around to row next year. Which is not the same, I think, as ISIS, where there are a lot of rather older people who probably are coming towards their end of their careers as undergraduates.
I think that's right. I think the ISIS boat, as we said earlier, has got 2 guys who were in the blue boat who, it's good of them to carry on rowing. A lot of times people drop out if they don't make the first boat. I don't imagine this was how they were hoping to finish their rowing careers at Oxford.
And you've got to feel a bit sorry for James Roycroft and Nick Robinson. 2 were in the blue boat last year, but again we're seeing the style of the Cambridge University Boat Club. Ronan Cantwell, the bowman, in front of him the Canadian Sean Cashin, then Colin Swainson, Christopher Hopcroft at 4, 5 is Charles Vickers, Richard Gaughan, hoping a lot from him. He's one of those who started his rowing at college. Dan Tweedy in the 7th seat, and Richard Stokes doing a BA in mathematics. He's getting all the sums right here.
And I think actually ISIS have closed up quite a lot. There was a time when there was a significant amount of clear water between the crews, and they're making a real effort to get back onto an overlap. They look as if they may have got it.
It's a big task ahead of them to row round the outside of this last bend. There's about 4 minutes to go now, and this bend is probably worth an extra 2/3 of a length to Goldie. If ISIS can come back now, that'll be quite an achievement.
Brave attempt. It's only been done a couple of times, and the crew that's behind it, Barnes Bridge, traditionally, Chris, does not make it.
No, it hasn't happened in recent years. I think the nearest probably was in 1980 when actually someone in the Oxford crew suffered a collapse, and Cambridge very nearly got back then, but they seem to have responded and pulled away, but it may just have been the camera angle which made it difficult for us to read.
So away we go. We're now looking from behind as they go through Barnes Bridge. And this is the sharpest bend on the course. They went through the centre arch, which is more than one of the contestants yesterday in the sculling competition did. He finished in second place. It would have been embarrassing had he won.
I think he'd been disqualified, I think. I think if we can speculate a little bit here, one of the most interesting things, of course, here is now the relationship this may bring to the next race. Everyone had speculated on how close Goldie might have been to the Blue Boat, but actually this has shown that the Cambridge Blue Boat may be rather quicker than people anticipated. This long, rather easy rhythm can be very deceptive, and Goldie have really taken this race by the scruff of the neck.
That's right. I was talking to Ian Dryden, who coaches them, just yesterday, and he said he felt they had the Goldie spirit again. I'm not entirely sure what that involves, but I think it meant they thought they had a good chance of winning.
Well, there was talk about Oxford being lifted, as they were, by the success of ISIS last year, but it was also a basis of motivation for Goldie. There were several people in the boat club absolutely determined that they would put that right.
I think certainly this Goldie crew, and it's been the tradition at Cambridge to have a very established and rather independent atmosphere in the Goldie crew. They like them to be independent, but I think there's some very tired people in this Goldie crew now. ISIS are currently rating at 2 pips above Goldie. They're at 38, Goldie's 36, and this is not perhaps completely over. Which is Stokes there, who's really fought an incredibly hard race, and look, there they are. They're still hanging on to their tail. There's pride at stake here for a couple of former Oxford Blues.
ISIS definitely lifting it here. They're trying to get past, desperately trying to get past. They've probably only got a couple of minutes to go there.
So I think it's less than that. Cambridge still got that. In an 8, a length is a great deal to get back, and actually they've got nearly a length and a half here. It just requires an enormous extra acceleration to get past. To run past the crew, you really need much more momentum than this ISIS crew have got.
But all credit to ISIS for making such a battle of it at the finish. Nick Robinson in the stroke seat, James Roycroft, the Blues in the 4 seat.
I think the one thing they might be disappointed about is that they didn't row quite as aggressively early on in the race when you know they came up with boats. They were a length behind within 2 minutes, and they've unfortunately only lost another half length in the last 14 minutes. If they perhaps they underestimated Goldie a little bit.
It's just not possible to be that far down. A length down at the milepost and more than half a length down at Hammersmith, you're in, and I think, real difficulty.
It's going to be another Goldie success as they come up to the finishing post and take what is their 23rd victory, as opposed to 12 by ISIS, who had closed again at the finish. But Goldie so disappointed 12 months ago. And with such, on paper, an inexperienced crew against a very experienced crew, are showing their delight, and one can understand that.
I could just say that's a startling result, and I really don't think there was overwhelming confidence to this result, but I think they thought that they had it within them, and they certainly have shown it. And I think if the message gets back to the start at Cambridge, that will do a great deal for the hearts and minds prior to the start of the big one.
I'm sure it will get back, and Ian Dryden and Donald Leggett have done an excellent job here. The first success of the afternoon is to the light blue boat, the reserve boat of Goldie, beating ISIS in a good finish and setting the record straight from 12 months ago.
And the Oxford crew have just come past us here at Putney and will have seen how that race finished on the big screens. Do you feel that it has any significance for the morale in these main boats?
It'll get back, the result will get back to the main boats, and obviously, you know, it's a boost for the Cambridge crew because it shows their system is working. Whether or not it gets back to the Oxford Blue boats, it's hard to tell, but Cambridge will definitely know.
I think it's sunk in with Oxford, certainly, and of course Cambridge this afternoon going for a potential 7th successive win. Oxford, slightly the favourites, they say.
Well, again, yeah, I mean, as I was saying earlier, talk on the towpath is Oxford's year. Oxford do seem to be rowing a lot better. They're rowing a lot longer, they're flowing, they've got a very easy rhythm. Cambridge are sort of, over the last 2 weeks, have been hit and miss. They've been having a couple of good outings and then one all right or average outing, but the consistency is with Oxford.
There's been a certain amount of talk about the comparative lack of experience in the Cambridge boat, and the spotlight inevitably on the cox Jan Sharif, the 10th woman to cox in a boat race. What have you made of her over the last few weeks?
She has come on an awful lot. I have to give her a lot of credit. She's a young 19-year-old girl who coxing a heavyweight men's crew is daunting anyway. She coxed the Cambridge lightweight women last year, but lost that in the women's boat race, and has done very well to get this far, and done very well to win her place. And talking to the guys in the crew, she has really come on in the last few weeks.
Is she going to be strong? Is she going to be aggressive?
Both coxers are going to be aggressive. Watch the steering in the first minutes of the start.
Okay, Neil O'Donnell, of course, is the other cox, and yesterday they had their all-important, in the light of what Gary was saying, all-important briefing with the race umpire, Mark Evans.
The boat race wouldn't be the same without the traditional clashing of blades. For the coxers, it's a battle of wits and skill. The man who will be refereeing this year's duel is Oxford Blue Mark Evans, who has been offering his own advice on the course to the coxers.
Remember, I'll be very patient once I set attention. I think the greatest concern is that you wouldn't call the start. My hand was down. Because I won't. The guy will not start the reins until both your hands are down. Now, in here, I thought you were both well out, and I thought that you were well into the flats on the screen, and I think that you were on the screen pretty much the way down here, but much more on the Middlesex station now, Missouri station. From Hammersmith Bridge up to here, okay, I thought you were a little wide. Other than that, fine. Not definitely wide one way or the other. And you may have been a little tight as you got through the bridge. You think of the line of boats coming down here before you get into the trees. I think sort of 12 meters out from the boats where the stream is, 10, 12 meters out. You guys were 20 and 15 out respectively. Okay? If you're still together coming through here, you can bet that I'm going to be watching whoever's on Middlesex to make sure that they don't try to push whoever is on Surrey too far out. Because there's advantage in the bend, and there's advantage in the stream. And we want to try to keep it fair on both counts. I stress lamentably, it's my interpretation as to whether you're off the station, not yours. Right? I can't give you a number of feet or a portion of a length. But if it gets close from where I am, I will be warning. And if they don't move, I will take action.
While the two crews now down at the stake boats, all ready for the main event, and we saw indeed in the Isis Goldie race that the early advantage gained by the crew on the Middlesex station in the end proved decisive. So it'll be interesting, the contest here between the two coxes, Jan Sharif. Cambridge are on the Surrey station and Oxford on the Middlesex station. So Oxford from this position from Bishop's Park are nearest to us. Charlie Humphreys, the president, trying to end the run. But I think we should have a word about how the umpire Mark Evans is actually going to start this race, because there's been a change. Chris?
Yes, this is quite complicated, but basically the start comes in two parts. There's two commands: attention, and then a gap, a pause, and go. Now, traditionally, the way the crews have started is on the command attention. They've turned the blades, which you can see at the moment, the blades which are lying on the top of the water, they turn them into the water, so they're held against the tide. and then when the umpire says go, they pull. Now, what the umpire has required is that they do not turn the oars until he has given the command go, which means actually the crews have got to make two movements in one. They've got to square the blades and then pull. And bearing in mind that the tide is moving at 4 knots beneath them, this is really quite technically difficult. And there's a real danger that someone could miss the first stroke completely.
Johnny?
I think that's right. I think his concern is probably that as the crews turn their blades square, there's a bloke who's hanging on the end of the boat. Obviously, the force of the water drags the boat away from that stake boat. I guess what he doesn't want to see is the stake boy fall in the water and follow them up the course.
And Mark certainly believes, I was talking to you about it earlier, that in his day, and indeed perhaps in mine also, we used to use the opportunity of squaring the blades to drag the stake boats, which meant we started probably 6 or 8 feet further down the course than we were supposed to. And I think that's slightly arguable, but certainly it's going to be interesting, and it will look as if the crews are starting rather slowly.
The umpire has not exactly read the riot act to the 2 coxes, but he's made it very clear that he's in charge, and he was asked a little earlier this morning whether a disqualification was unthinkable, and he replied with the simple word, no. There is Di Ellis in the Cambridge boat. An excellent summary of this race. He said it's a test beyond physical capacity and technique. It proves what you have here, he said, pointing to his guts, and here, he said, pointing to his heart, and it produces real winners. As ever, enthusiastic crowds on a rather disappointingly grey afternoon, which is going to cause us a few problems. Well, then it's not going to cause us problems, it's just going to make life a little more difficult. Because of the low cloud ceiling, we do not have use of the helicopter, so we can't show you the helicopter shot, and that will also have an effect upon other cameras on board the boats. But in spite of that, I hope you're going to enjoy this 145th race, in which it's a question of the crews managing their assets. It's the first race under the sponsorship of Aberdeen Asset Management.
I think one of the things that would be interesting to look out for in the race is Oxford in the 2 practice races they've had have been quite slow off the start, certainly in the first minute or 2. They've been very steady and very strong through the middle of the race. Be looking to make sure, from my point of view as an Oxford person, make sure that Oxford can get up and get involved early on, so they get a chance to settle into their really, what I think is quite a fast cruise rhythm through the middle of the race.
I think that's right, particularly after what we've seen with the stations reversed for the Isis Goldie race, and that neither side can afford to get more than half a length or so behind. Cambridge do row a very different style to Oxford. They are a taller crew, they're 3 inches nearly a man taller, but they actually also row a longer stroke. They reach longer at the catch, that's the beginning of the stroke, and I think most significantly they row a longer finish. And those of you who watched last year and the year before will realise how Cambridge just pulled away from Oxford last year just by drawing the finish a little harder. So Cambridge have this long rhythm, which we'll watch out for. Oxford, more compact one.
Well, when this successive victories began, it ended 6 successive by Oxford. Cambridge's last chance of moving to a 7th was in 1974. They were unable to take it. And in fact, they haven't been successful 7 consecutive times since 1930. Read into that what you like, and in the Michael Caine theory of not a lot of people know that, they also have not won a race this century that's been rowed on the 3rd of April. Put that in as a fairly useful statistic.
Just trying to work all that out. Who's going to win then?
I hope no one told them that, Barry.
Very calm
Oxford ready. Cambridge ready.
In Ettingshausen, the umpire calling for the crews to be ready, but as the 2 coxes have their arms up, they are not. 2 strokes live barely 15 miles apart. Man from Cambridge and the man from Oxford, and from Mulheim Ruhr and Düsseldorf, 2 Germans in the strokes. the moment from Bishop's Park. Looking from the Middlesex side, that is. It's Neil O'Donnell, the American cox, who was successful last year with ISIS. Admits to something of the hero factor, hoping that having ended the run of Goldie, briefly as it turned out, he can now end the run of Cambridge. Graham Smith, the number 7 man from Cambridge, with a little look over. O'Donnell's arm down, and now Bian Sharif's arm down. Just getting the boats absolutely straight. Ready for the flag to go down. Here's Mark Evans. Twice an Oxford blue, and umpiring for the 3rd time. Long pause, and of course both the coxes now have put their arms back up again. There was a brief moment, but it wasn't taken. Chris?
I think he's having trouble. When one of the crew has to straighten up, he has to square his oar up, and I think it's being very hard to correct the angle of the boat. I think this business of not squaring is proving to be very difficult.
It's not a good time for the crews here. Be very nervous here. You just want to be off and getting on with the race right now. You certainly don't want to be sitting here. It's not a particularly comfortable position to be sitting in. Certainly not holding there for a couple of minutes.
Long hold. And immediately go as soon as the arms came down. Oxford on the Middlesex station nearer the camera. Cambridge having won the toss on the far side, which is the Surrey station. As we come down Fulham Reach, the boathouses will come in. Look at those packed crowds. Still a fascination for this event, which is now worldwide.
Even in this early season, just see the different style there. Cambridge a bit longer forwards with their bodies, and that extra power they're generating, they're just starting to move away a little bit. Just a couple of feet, maybe.
Certainly, despite their considerable physical length, Cambridge have shown their ability to be very quick out of the first 10 or 20 strokes, but that's not where the race is won. It's the rhythm that's critical, and Oxford are certainly responding stroke for stroke at this stage.
It's a very even start, and so far, distance between the two sets of blades. And we're now looking from our camera by Beverley Brook, which is on the Surrey station. So we're looking down on Cambridge nearer the camera. And the bend coming up is in the advantage of their opposition from Oxford.
Both the crews have settled down into their cruise paces now, and Oxford have pulled back. I think Oxford are going just a little bit quicker than Cambridge. They're rating 36, probably stroke for stroke.
As Cambridge have got just the initiative, and they need to do that because the next bend, which will come up in the next minute and a half, will give Oxford about a third of a length and will certainly bring them level. Cambridge have just got the initiative and have got a fraction of perhaps a third of a length. They're at 36 to Oxford's 35. Cambridge will be happy at this stage, but the steering is the first thing to look at.
Neil is a very aggressive cox. Last year, the Isis and Goldie crews clashed all the way down the course. This one here, he's going to be trying to push Cambridge out of the side of the bend. He wants the fastest bit of river, the bit that's in the middle. He also wants to push Cambridge as wide as he can.
This is looking from our camera on a catamaran, which is following the crews up towards Crabtree Reach.
And the umpire is warning Oxford to Middlesex. It's the first time he's intervened. He's indicated that if they don't, he'll drive his launch right up on top of them. He thinks this will be either an incentive or a discouragement because the effect will be to drag the boat back. He's warning Oxford again. Oxford trying to crowd the bend.
Yes, O'Donnell trying to hold his
Big
line
clash.
before turning, and there's a clash of blades there.
He's really done his crew no favours at all there, because you see where they've gone now. They've gone off. He's had to steer hard away from them, and they've probably lost a few feet there.
That's probably a classic example of how not to involve yourself in a clash, because applying the rudder acts like a brake. He's also now the umpire warning Cambridge over towards their station on Surrey, and he's being very firm. You can hear him saying Cambridge to go to Surrey. Cambridge were trying to come back on top of them.
And I think Oxford are coming back through now. They're still holding this distance, Cambridge maybe a third of a length up, but I think Oxford have the confidence. They've rode a lot of people down in training, rode from behind, and the longer the race goes on, I think the happier Oxford will be.
That, of course, goes back to last year when there was a clash at roughly around this stage, and Cambridge reacted much more quickly than Oxford. Andrew Lindsay in particular said we've got to expect a clash and we've got to learn how to react from it, and we intend to do so.
But you know, Cambridge have definitely come out of this first mile better. They've kept about a third of a length, which means they've actually gone another third of a length further because they've rode around the outside of the bend.
I think Oxford have just pushed a move in there. Their rate's just gone up. You can just see the blades going in a bit. You know, they're just taking a few more strokes every minute. That makes the boat go faster. They're trying to get through Cambridge here.
And that's been confirmed by the rates. Cambridge at 33, Oxford at 35. They definitely had to push to try and stay on terms because the next big bend is going to be Cambridge's favour. Oxford being warned again because they're trying to push Cambridge over, trying to make sure that Oxford keep the majority of the tide.
I think Oxford are paying for this push early on the push they've just done. They're slipping back a little bit now.
Well, that was the problem last year. 3:37 for Cambridge at the milepost, 3:38 for Oxford. 1 second between the crews, but the early pushes can sometimes prove to be decisive at the end of the day.
They can, and certainly the relationship between the crews at Hammersmith is very important. You know, coming into this next bend, this has put Cambridge in a very significant position. They've got perhaps 2/3 of a length, and they've got a big bend coming their way. It will be very important to them how they handle the next 2 minutes of the race, because they've really got to pounce on Oxford as they come in towards Hammersmith Bridge.
I think Cambridge are almost out to a length lead now. This is, as it always is in this race, a crucial time at 2/3 of a length, 3/4 of a length lead. It's vital for the crew that's behind to keep in contact. They must keep touch.
And this, traditionally, all but one of Cambridge's successes came from the Surrey station in this run of 6, and it's at this point, approaching Hammersmith Bridge, that has proved decisive for them.
It's such an important point, because if Cambridge can get away, if they can just get clear water, then they can dominate the rest of the race. It makes it very difficult for the crew behind to get back on terms. The umpire warning Cambridge again. What Cambridge are trying to do is now to start to push Oxford wide. They obviously want a good line into the bridge, Cambridge, but also if they can push Oxford onto the outside of it, it makes it even more of an advantage for them. Cambridge now beginning to push, because this is where the bend starts to turn into their favour.
That was Harris Depository we just went past.
That's right. Oxford are desperately struggling to stay in touch. I just think their blade work is a little bit ragged. What that means is they're less efficient. So for the same boat speed, they're using more energy. Obviously, as the race goes on, they'll be getting more tired. And at some point, Oxford are going to pay for that.
The Cambridge success has been based on the quality of the rhythm and the length of their stroke. Chris?
Indeed, and at the moment they're really holding together well. I think there has been some question about how the very tall men, this Josh West at 6'9", Kieran West at 6'8" at 6, you know, tremendous pressure on them to hold the rhythm. But Cambridge have got to make an impression. Their advantage is really in the next minute and a half.
Here they go, under Hammersmith Bridge, and we've got another good contest on our hands here.
Oxford must stay with the overlap. Cambridge must try and break it.
Oxford looked to have gone a little bit wide through the bridge there. They really wanted to be leaning as far as they can on Cambridge, trying to push Cambridge out the side of the stream.
Wonderful shot as the flotilla comes round behind the boats. Tim Vuga holding a nice, easy rhythm.
6'7½". I think he's the second largest man to have stroked the boat race crew. Gavin Stewart, I think, the largest for Oxford back in the mutineer, but he's had a lot of experience stroking University of Northeastern University in America, and he's really setting these big men up behind him.
Okay, and it looks like Cambridge have just slipped a little bit more. They're almost at clear water now. Oxford, this is their last ditch thing, I think. Here they must get back in contact now.
And this is always a difficult decision for the cox of the boat, which is behind. Does he come in behind the leading boat briefly?
That's right. There's an argument that at this point, what Oxford should really do is settle in, cruise along, and then try and push round their final bend when Cambridge will have to go back to their own station. It doesn't actually work like that.
That's the armchair pundit view, I think. When you're actually in the boat, it isn't. And the other problem, of course, is the disruption you get from the water being thrown back by the oars. What we call the puddles of the blades in front is very disruptive. You can feel it running underneath your oar blade. Makes it hard to grip the water. But Cambridge now have certainly got clear water. It looks about a length and 2/3, perhaps a length and a half to a length and 2/3. They've got what they want at this stage, but they can't rest on their laurels. They can't afford to let Oxford get a sniff of the Barnes Bend. Oxford have now got to hold on for perhaps 3 minutes.
That's right. I mean, it's still actually quite early in the race. They're almost not quite halfway yet. In terms of the effort they put in, both crews will be, would be happy to see the finish now. It's always possible that one of the people in the leading boat will have done too much. Chris talked about 1980. Oxford have to hope for that sort of thing now.
So let's get a coxing view from Gary Herbert.
Cambridge looking very nice now. They're long and loose, and Oxford just looking back. Neil O'Donnell really has to keep his crew long in the water. He's got to make sure their heads are up. The heads are sort of flagging a bit. The arms are just going at the finish. But
looking ahead at Cambridge, flat water. They can just relax.
They've got about a length of clear water now. I guess Vian Sharif
now is just calling a crew into a loose rhythm and to enjoy the rest of the race.
Not record times this year, but another efficient row and another good contest.
Indeed. I think Vian Sharif, who Gary was talking about, has done a jolly good job. She's the youngest person here. She's very little experience, probably less relative than any of the rowers, and she's steered immaculately, really, under pressure. Now Cambridge in the position to relax a bit, though they won't want the gap to close. They just want to keep Oxford where they are.
20 years old on Monday for the record. And here is Colin Ettingshausen. Huge experience. Disappointed in the 96 Olympics, which is one of the reasons he wanted to come back and row at Oxford to end on a success. And the American there, Crotty, really feeling it.
I think that's right. I mean, Oxford have got a lot of good guys. They've got a lot of good internationals in the boat. It just shows what a good system Cambridge have got running here. They're just rowing better. It doesn't matter what you have by way of talent. If the crew rows better, they'll go faster.
And it was also hurting Andrew Lindsay in the 7th seat. Look, Chris.
He's such a committed competitor, Andrew. He's a great rower. He's rowing for Britain. And they thought they'd got it right this year. But Cambridge have gone on their own quiet way. As I said at the opening, really, there is a difference in the way that Cambridge are rowing, and I think over the boat race course in particular, it makes a difference. You can just see that with the Oxford crew, there just isn't that impulse off the finish. The blade's just not drawn through that last inch or two, which in Cambridge just gives the boat that little extra impulse, that little bit more run. If you get an extra inch of run every stroke over the boat race course, it gives you the best part of the length for nothing. And Cambridge are just sweeping it on by, using this considerable length. They're 6'6.5" average. I can remember even 30 years ago, we'd have thought a man of 6'6" in the bow seat was absurd.
Steps times 10:10 for Oxford, for Cambridge, 10:17 for Oxford, so it's gone up to 7 seconds, the difference between the two crews, and it's increasingly showing, isn't it? It looks as though Cambridge are continuing to go away here.
That's right. This is a pretty miserable time, I think, for the Oxford guys. They know basically they've got 5 or 6 minutes to show some pride, but ultimately that's what they're racing for here.
I think Johnny made the comment that it's Cambridge's system, and we haven't been so fortunate in being able to, perhaps attracts the wrong phrase, but we've had less oarsmen from outside the university coming in from abroad and elsewhere. We've had some very distinguished ones, but Cambridge has had to develop its own rowers. And Toby Wallace at Bow, for example, is a hockey player who learnt to row entirely at Cambridge. And we've had 1 or 2 oarsmen for the last few years who've learnt entirely at Cambridge, which is good for the sport, actually.
Well, interestingly enough, the comment has been made by a number of the men at Cambridge to say that it's a much more even crew, and at times they've been faster than last year's crew, which of course broke all the records, but the tide then was different. Sometimes, those statistics can be misleading.
That's right. I think these times are still pretty quick. Last year was an exceptionally fast Cambridge crew and exceptionally fast conditions. I suspect that even though these times are a bit behind last year, that it's still going to be a very quick race.
But that emphasises the point that they thought this crew might even be faster or better than last year's crew.
I think that's right, although they didn't have the big stars. The big thing about this race is it's not so much the best people you've got in your boat, but the worst people, if that makes sense. They're the limiting factor.
Just listen to the noise from the banks. Huge support. Packed crowds all the way down. Toby Wallace is going to be a second success for him. Tom Stannard, Brad Crombie, who's going to go into the record books. Not many with the number of successes he's had. Josh West, Dialis, down to Kieran West. Graham Smith, second success for him, and Tim Vuga and Vian Sharif. First successful lady, Eleanor Hollis, for the record in the boat race if Cambridge maintained this.
Certainly, Lady Hollis is the leading women's rowing school, coached by the redoubtable Beryl Croxford. There we see Oxford.
Charlie Humphreys, Henrik Nielsen, Dan Snow, Toby Eyre with the sunglasses, Martin Crotty, American international, Morgan Crooks, Canadian international. But the internationals, there are more of them in the Oxford boat, 5-3. The advantage very much with Cambridge.
Cambridge are just cruising it now.
Under Barnes Bridge.
And this is a big margin, actually. That's probably 4 or 5 lengths. The Oxford are really struggling now.
And I think the conclusion must be that Cambridge have excelled themselves and Oxford must have rowed below what they're capable of. I think we all thought that this was a crew, perhaps Cambridge we thought was at least as good as theirs went before. And I know a little of the times that they were doing up at Nottingham, and they've certainly performed well. But I think, you know, even as a Cambridge man, I could see the virtues of this Oxford crew, which was definitely very quick. But Cambridge have really grabbed this. The training is really now coming through and showing what they're capable of.
You can see from the map that they're on the final bend, which is the sharpest bend, and Cambridge in total control. Neil O'Donnell trying to encourage his men, but it is just not possible for Oxford from here unless something quite extraordinary happens to the Cambridge boat.
It's always very difficult if you think you're. I mean, I think Oxford genuinely thought they had a good chance this year. That on paper they probably are the faster crew in terms of their pedigrees. If you think you're the faster crew, and then you find yourself in almost an unwinnable position, it's always that much more depressing. And I'm sure this is not a great time for them, this last 3 or 4 minutes.
There was a quiet confidence in the other camp, and once again, it's a question of getting it right on the day. Oxford certainly tailed off quite a lot in this last week.
Yeah, I mean, Cambridge appear to have got better almost every day this week, you know, and a lot can happen in a week of rowing. Oxford have been faster probably throughout the last 4 months or so. Unfortunately, the race was today rather than.
That actually is a comment which we could have made in the last 2 years. You know, Cambridge, under the tutelage of Robin Williams, with help from others, of course, particularly Harry Mahon, have really got it right. And there's no doubt that they've taken this race right from the start.
And it's an extremely fast time in these conditions without the support from Father Thames of last year. And the distance gets further and further, it seems. Real sympathy for at least 2 people in the Oxford boat, Charlie Humphreys and Andrew Lindsay. Maybe losers again, Henrik Nielsen as well.
It's interesting going from it. When I was around, we won most of the time, and it didn't really occur to us what it would be like to be part of a losing scene. And now we're beginning to see what that's like, and it becomes very depressing when you see crews that you think have got a good chance of winning, and then they lose. It's going to be very hard for Oxford to turn this round. You know, over the next few years.
That was certainly our observation at Cambridge. We knew we had to be significantly faster to try and overcome the Oxford run of victories.
And they come to the finish. Cambridge have done it again. 7th successive victory, and Brad Crombie with arm aloft. Oxford unable to end this sequence. And of course the last time, Chris, in 1930, when they went on to get the 7th victory, it went on to be 13.
And on. And I think it's the manner of the victory which is almost so surprising. Even as a dyed-in-the-wool Cambridge man, I believe they could win, but the manner of the victory has been just complete. I think you can see there's absolute exultation.
Well, I don't think that any pictures at the end of a boat race, at any sporting event, show more the ecstasy here from Cambridge, Tom Stallard, and the agony from Oxford.
I'm trying to say some encouraging things about Cambridge. It was a very impressive Cambridge performance from a technical point of view. Basically just rowing better. Oxford looking pretty dejected, as I am.
I'm obviously delighted for Cambridge. I think there are some young British oarsmen there who may be able in the future to help greatly in British. And there's Goldie. They too have got news for them.
Yes, I mean, traditionally too, the Goldie crew come out as indeed the ISIS crew come out to take in the boat, the blue boat. And once again, it's going to be a greeting, Goldie re-establishing their superiority in the reserve event, and Cambridge continuing with their superiority in the main event.
I think at Oxford there was a big feeling that last year after the ISIS victory that perhaps we were could have maybe turned a corner, but apparently not.
Yeah, I think obviously from Cambridge's perspective they probably do feel they're all back on the road again, and the good news from Cambridge's perspective is they have got all these Goldie oarsmen back again next year, and that's part of their system.
Yes, the smiles on the face tell the story better than any words.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris mentioned earlier about having guys at Oxford for only a year or two. One of the problems with that is they might be good guys, but they don't get to row in the style that everyone else is rowing. What a bunch of Cambridge guys is they're there 3 years.
16:41, the finishing time for the winning Cambridge boat. 16:19 last year, but the conditions nothing like as favourable. 16:52 for Oxford, and I think that time actually backs up what Brad Crombie and the coaches were saying, that they were at times faster than last year.
I think that's right. Now that broke the record that stood till last year. The record till last year was 16:45, so it went inside the record, which of course was broken last year. So it was an outstanding performance by any standard. And I think they were much quicker than people gave them credit for.
Yeah, they kept out of the way. They didn't really race many people around. I think no one really had any form guide.
So I think that was more because they couldn't find anyone to race. The one big opportunity they had was washed out by the weather.
Right. Just look at Charlie Humphreys there, the president, with his head in his hands. Hoped so much that he could end the run, but he goes away from Oxford having lost 3 blue boat races and 1 ISIS race. It's very hard for them to take, but it will not concern those who have won again and carried on the tradition. She's been enjoying it all the way through, and Brad Crombie joins a pretty exclusive band. The gentleman to my left, Chris Bellew, has won it more times than anyone else, but there aren't many who've won it 3 times.
No, I think we counted up. We reckon there were 4, and that includes Graham Hughes was a Cox, and it only happens about once every 30 years at Cambridge. I think more often at Oxford, Johnny. I think you might be able to, tell us.
Reasonably recent history. There's a few people there who won 3 times, but I'm not sure how soon it's going to be before we have any more.
Stallard getting the congratulations, the president going around everybody to say well done. And in the end, the president, as Charlie Humphreys was saying, is judged simply on whether it was a success or a failure. But Charlie has done a lot of good things down at Oxford. It's a more involved club with both boats, but they haven't been able to find success. Ooh, that'll be the picture in all the morning papers.
Let's hope his girlfriend saw that.
Actually, I don't think there is a current girlfriend. I don't think Toby has a current girlfriend.
He's been a long way at the bow. He hasn't had a chance for a long time up at the bows.
Well, there were 1 or 2 who had great doubts about Vian Sharif. She did a good job.
You know, she did, and I think also Mark Evans didn't allow it to get out of hand. He was very firm.
I was amazed actually that there wasn't a bit more. The last 2 years, there's been a lot of aggressive coxing, and both coxes did excellently today.
There was one very early on, but the umpire didn't allow it to develop.
And here the umpire called early, and he pulled them apart. He had warned them what he'd do, which was to put his launch right on their tail. And I actually think the crews thought pretty long and hard about that. And from now onwards, they got rather better behaved.
It was when Neil O'Donnell had to pull away. And we wait now for the presentation. So, all these statistics of runs of wind stopping at 6 thrown out of the window. A success on the 3rd of April in 1999.
So they can now include April the 3rd as a lucky day, Barry.
And a very happy Canadian president with 3 successes behind him, only this last one as president. Brad Crombie is waiting to talk to Steve Ryder.
Brad Crombie, for the 3rd time, congratulations, but that must be just about the most satisfying of all.
It was the most fun race I've ever had at Cambridge, so it's a great note to end on.
Fun in what respect?
Well, I think what we had in this race was just a superior boat speed from the first stroke to the last stroke, and it made our jobs a lot easier just to have the boat moving away with every stroke. It made our job just very, very simple.
And all the internationals in the Oxford boat, all the suggestions that they had the advantage, they were the favourites, and you've really laid that to rest today.
Well, I like to believe that it's the crew that wins, not the individuals. Yeah. They might have had a number of good people in their boat, but we have a good team.
We've got a slight height problem for the cameraman here. Toby Wallace, congratulations. Vian Sharif, that was absolute perfection, wasn't it?
It was fantastic. We thought it'd be a really close race, but we raced hard. But we came through and we won, and it was just brilliant. It was brilliant.
The early exchanges, Neil, put you under a bit of pressure, but you weren't going to be pushed around.
I don't really remember the first bit of the race because it's so pre-planned, but we were in control all the way, really. So didn't feel under any pressure at all.
It went absolutely perfectly. Let's talk to the man at the other end of the boat. Toby Wallace, we were involved in your build-up for the race, and job done.
Indeed, it was a great race. It was even better than last year, I think. The rhythm and the pattern was even better. It was fantastic. Great to be part of it.
It's a time for celebration and a time for reflection and a certain amount of sympathy for Oxford. What can they do about you lot?
Well, I think they were a very good crew and they rode very well. I think we were just very lucky. The group of guys we had this year, we put together a really fast 8.
And it's a fast 8 with potential, yourself included. This could go on and on.
Yeah, maybe if I could learn to race smaller boats a bit faster than 8.
It's a terrific performance. Win number 7. Go and enjoy it and go and collect that asset management trophy.
The Oxford boat just coming very slowly to shore. Very disappointed German stroke. Colin Ettingshausen. There was definitely a belief among the dark blues this year and a very interesting and decent bunch. That's one of the things about the boat race. It's such an emotional event. You do get involved and have sympathy for those who lose. And that's, again, very much the case this year. Nice applause for the losing crew from Goldie members. That's Cashin, the Canadian, who will be up next year, and hope that he'll have his chance in the blue boat.
I think the thing that makes it very hard for them is most of these guys, well, all these guys are just students. They're under a hell of a lot of pressure today, and they'll feel like they've let a lot of people down, which isn't the case at all. They've just lost the race.
But that is what the boat race is about, isn't it?
That's it. It's 6 months, and it's 6 months for one reason and one reason only. Now, our fortune, Johnny, was that we were always on the right side.
Yeah. So the medals being presented by the Chief Executive of Aberdeen Asset Management, Martin Gilbert. Toby Wallace collects his. They certainly did get their assets right. Di Ellis only had the one chance. The German stroke. Tim Vuger, Graham Smith, second success for him. Kieran West, who was in the losing Goldie crew last year, and that was very much his motivation. Josh West, not only the tallest man, an irrelevant statistic. The statistic that counts is that Cambridge have won again, in his view. Tom Stallard, and the shake of the hand, Angus Pelham-Byrne. The chairman presents the Quake, which is the new trophy of Aberdeen Asset Management, presenting the award to a delighted Brad Crombie. And whiskey traditionally will be put in that, but there's a huge bottle of champagne presented by Martin Gilbert. And Vian Sharif waits her moment. She knows that she won't get wet from champagne only, she'll get wet from the water of Father Thames. She's about to be delivered into his hands as soon as the presentation is over.
I hope they're not going to waste all that spraying it. He was a bit careful not to shake it.
Well,
oh, good. perhaps not.
This is not going to be the easiest to do. It is an awful waste of champagne anyway, Johnny, isn't it?
That's how they gave him the cheap stuff.
Yeah. Martin Gilbert lending his hand, the chairman in the background. It's one of the things about the Aberdeen Asset Management team. They've got so involved.
They might be strong enough to win the boat race.
It's not going to come.
There's a smaller bottle of champagne being held by Vian. Well, it's the only, at the moment, failure that Brad Crombie has had during his time at Cambridge. Still has to go on to complete all the work that he's been doing on his historical...
He's not going to be helping out any Formula One.
He's been doing PhD in 19th century German history, but he could do with Field Marshal von Kneisenhauer, who was one of his subjects, to help him pull this cork out.
I think it's going to be a team effort. They're all going to have a go. Total. I think we'd have to say, honestly, because they've been training so hard, they haven't had as much experience of this as perhaps they need.
You know what's going to happen here? They're going to give the last pull will be to Vian, who will immediately pull it out, and then there will be a lot of very embarrassed guys there. Well, it's different.
This is one thing you can't dress rehearse with, is it?
No.
So the champagne manufacturer glued this one in, I think.
That's right.
They never expect anyone to open it. It's a dummy.
Well, Vian is collecting all the medals as they help, which is going to make it difficult to chuck her into the water. This is Tom Stallard trying to pull out the cork. Kieran Westnut. Oh, they've all had a go.
He's made up for his brother, of course, because his brother Damien didn't manage to win for Oxford, and Kieran has managed to win for Cambridge. So
and I'm reliably informed by Kieran that Damien today was supporting Oxford, because when the boot was on the other foot, Kieran supported Oxford when Damien rode. The family has a much more Cambridge tradition.
I know.
A little bit of science being applied
yes,
now.
I think so.
A large hammer.
Yes. Well,
I was going to try for the small bottle, that.
Yeah. Toby Wallace goes away, and although the moment with the champagne bottle failed, it might mean that it's actually drinkable when they finally get the cork off. I think we're waiting for Vian Sherif, who incidentally will celebrate her 20th birthday. The unofficial distance is 3.5 lengths and 11 seconds. The victory for Cambridge in the last boat race of the 20th century takes the record to Cambridge 76, Oxford 68. That's Heidi Richardson, the physiotherapist. Toby Wallace seems to be very adept at getting kisses from any female involved in the event.
I wonder why he was selected for the... That's Guy Pooley, yeah. The man who lost three races.
Yeah, Guy Pooley. I think he lost 4 races, if my memory serves me right. As you won,
yeah.
4. So it just shows you have to be up at university at the right time, as Johnny Sir was, and Chris Bailey.
I think that's right. I think that's makes it very hard to be part of a good system at the right time. Can
Richard
just
Phelps,
make that difference.
Richard Phelps, a former successful president.
And indeed, the last Cambridge man to win 3, actually. He's done so much more recently as part of it. Oh, look, here she goes.
Here we go. The reward for I'm not sure whether gilding the lily is quite the right expression, but he's...
Fancy his chances of their own ball, I think.
1, 2, 3. Well, I think that's the best we've done.
Because she is the lightest, only 6 stone 10.5.
But she's not sinking.
Yes, Sir Lancelot has done his stuff again.
I think there might be a story. But maybe we should leave the story there, leave the crews to their celebrations, have sympathy again for Oxford, particularly those who have failed for the 3rd time. Cambridge, the victors, again by 3.5 lengths. 11 seconds, their 7th consecutive victory, and the 5th for their coach.
And that's the 1999 University Boat Race, Cambridge once again, but for every celebration there's always desperate disappointment as well. And I'm afraid, Charlie Humphreys, it's a feeling as Oxford president you've experienced before, but it doesn't become any easier, does it?
No, it definitely doesn't. This year is worse than the previous years, maybe because I was president, but we were very confident in our abilities this year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to put it into practice on the day, and it won't sink in for a good few weeks yet.
When you look back at how this race was won and run, where do you feel it went wrong?
I really don't know. We found a reasonable rhythm, and we seemed to match them for boat speed over the first third of the race. They seemed to put in a very effective move at about Hammersmith Bridge, which we weren't able to keep up with. I don't know. We're going to have to look at the way we do everything that we do in our system, and just try to put things right for next next year. We'll definitely be back next year stronger than ever, and there are some people here today who will be back to beat Cambridge.
There's enormous potential in their boat as well. They're going to remain very, very tough to beat, aren't they?
They are. But having said that, we have produced top quality crews for the last 3 years, and I'm very confident that Oxford will be there stronger than ever next year.
Well, you will handle it as well as ever, I'm sure. Be back next year and give them a good race. Thanks very much indeed. Cambridge for the 7th successive year in this university boat race, and that's it from the towpath. The one downside of following the university boat race down the river is that you end up stranded at the end of the afternoon in a riverside pub, which is where we will have to remain for the next couple of hours.